If I would known we were sporting NHL teams, I would have worn my Avalanche hat.
Wes has his Western one.
Yeah.
All right, we are officially live with a new episode of Goal Horns and Fight Songs. I'm your host, Wes, or Painted Bronco on Twitter. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mike. And we have a very special guest joining us this evening. It is evening time. This man is the father of a man who has made Goal Horns and Fight Songs a thing all season long, and none more so than this season. He is Ethen Frank's dad, Dave Frank. Dave, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Excellent. So there's been a lot of podcasts who've talked to players, coaches throughout the years, but especially in college hockey, I think like the parents kind of get overlooked. So I'm really interested in to hear like your perspective of Ethan's path to college hockey, and now that he's wrapped up his senior season, his graduate season here at Western.
Well, our path has always, just been the financial support for the most part. When he was younger, I did a lot of coaching, not on the ice side, but on the inline side of roller hockey. And then as he progressed and became a better player and moved up in the rankings in the ice hockey world, we just continued to support him and try to give him the right tools and the right opportunities to continue to move forward.
So my first question comes here did Ethen spend time like out of the house as far as hockey goes? Because I know like hockey is one of those sports where you get to a certain point and you get this opportunity to move away a little bit. So was that something that you guys went through, or not so much?
We were actually fortunate enough that when he was 13, he played for a team out of Kansas City called Russell Stovers. Well, they're non-existent now, but you couldn't, at that age, go live with a host family. And that starts at the 16U level or 15 or 16. Well, that year that he was playing for Kansas City, his former coach, Dave Wilkie, who's a ex-NHLer, created a AAA program here in Omaha. And that's what it really progressed from there. We were fortunate enough that it was right in our backyard, and the program was a very successful program. The years that Ethen played there, played with a lot of high-end players. They were very well recognized throughout the country as one of the top 10 teams. And so we were very fortunate at that point in time that he didn't have to move out, where in the case of that, at that point in time, we started hosting kids at our house that played with Ethen from other parts of the country.
Awesome.
And then once he was drafted by the Lincoln Stars in the USHL, that's when his first opportunity to move out of the house was. It was only 45 minutes away, but he was out of the house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because, I don't have any real history with hockey other than just watching it. I did a lot of other sports, and all my sports were local. So, like, that part of hockey is something that I don't really understand or know a whole lot about. So it's really interesting to hear those stories of, guys moving out or in your case, having other people come in and stay. So it's cool that you guys got that opportunity.
Yeah, we were very fortunate for the years that we did it. 6 or 7 years. Actually, we even were hosting kids after Ethen went to Western. We had obviously an extra room in the house, so we actually took on a second kid for the program to kind of help with kids trying to progress just as Ethen did, and give those kids opportunities to succeed and move on in their hockey careers as well. And then once, Ethen started playing quite a bit with Western, the seasons obviously were matching up, and we weren't just going to be home enough, home enough to make sure we were doing our end to take care of the kids that were living with us. So we had to back out at that point in time.
Yeah, because you guys travel an awful lot. I mean, you and I met Ethan's freshman year, the end of his freshman year in Colorado. I believe is when we first met, and then we've had conversations along the ways in past seasons when we saw each other in Vegas, and so I do know you guys do travel quite a bit. Have you hit all 8 schools?
Yes. Yep. I was fortunate enough that last year, my wife and I think the last one that we hadn't gone to together was Miami of Ohio.
Okay.
And she had been there previous years where I couldn't make it because of work. And so I made it a point that the COVID year, when they first started allowing parents to start coming and watching after the pod, is when we started doing a little more traveling and able to get to all 8 facilities.
Okay, yeah, I think Miami was really the first opportunity you guys had to see him, or did Western allow parents? Because I know fans weren't allowed at all last year. This was the first year that fans were back in Lawson. Yeah,
our first time to watch Ethan play live was at Western, and then we went to all the other schools at that point in time to make sure that we could get to all 8 schools.
Cool. Miami has a very nice arena. I don't know that they necessarily utilize their space as well as some others do, but it's a gorgeous facility. It's huge. I think they have 2 or 3 sheets of ice in the complex that they play at. But that was actually the first NCHC school I went to besides being here on campus. You mentioned the pod, and that was, the NCHC was the only conference that was able to pull something like that off or even put it together. But you guys had an extremely unusual circumstance. Like, you had Ethan that close, but still had to watch all the games on NCHC TV or however you were getting them, right?
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. We were 15 minutes away, and were unable to see him, talk to him. I mean, without using a phone, and then obviously watch any games. We decided to go cheer the team on at practice one morning, and found out when they were practicing, watched at the practice rink. Unfortunately, we didn't get to stay very long. It was early in the morning. It was about 18 degrees, and we were standing at the north end of the building, so no sunshine. And it was pretty chilly morning. So we stood around for about 15, 20 minutes, got a stick tap from the team because we were the only people there, obviously, and did a little wave and then left.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking that he was 15 minutes away from home and we didn't get to see any of those games.
Yeah. You guys also got a pretty neat opportunity this year because I believe they did the senior night thing last year, but with nobody in the building, and then you got to see how the Lawson Lunatics really get to say goodbye to their senior players. So what was kind of like that going through the empty arena and then getting to see the full experience on 2 separate senior nights?
Yeah, there didn't get to do a whole lot last year, even with some of the families in the building. So there wasn't a whole lot done last year. And so it was really a great experience this year, getting to see all the fans, and the Lawson Lunatics obviously show their appreciation for the student athletes that, give their heart and soul to the university to try to win games and do what they need to do to obviously continue their career, but put Western on the map as a dominating force in the hockey world.
Mike, do you have anything? I feel like I'm hoarding all Dave's time here.
Well, one thing, going back to the billet families and everything, since you were a host family for some players, did that make it a lot easier for you than when Ethan went to Lincoln to play for the Stars, because you knew what it was like, what a host family was like, instead of sending your kid off and, oh boy, oh geez, how is he going to handle, what's this family going to be like? Did that alleviate some worries that you might have? Because a lot of parents, they just send their kids off to college at 18, 19 years old, depending on how old they are. And he's a young 15, 16-year-old kid going to another family. But did that help knowing kind of what the process was?
It really did. And we knew what all the right questions were to ask. Ethan knew what kind of expectations to have going forward, living with a host family, because he saw how we expected our billet kids to behave themselves and act accordingly. Obviously, the coach and the team set restrictions on what they and curfews. So it really helps keep things in line, just making sure that you do your part when you're at someone else's house and treat it as if it was yours was probably our biggest thing. And the good thing about Ethan moving to Lincoln was we knew the host family. I actually coached their kid a couple of seasons in inline hockey as well. So we kind of already knew them. And Ethan also competed against him in roller hockey as well. So kind of already knew them from a hockey experience. So it was a good fit. They really enjoyed Ethan being there. And he was a little older. He was 17 when he moved out, where we were actually hosting 15-year-old kids. So a little bit different in age, being able to drive himself back and forth to school and to practice and stuff. And some of these younger kids at 15, they always made sure there was another kid in the house if they had two to make sure that they had a ride. And we were fortunate enough that that always happened for us. If we had a 15-year-old, we also had a 16-year-old that could drive as well. But yeah, it was a pretty easy transition for my wife and I, knowing obviously easier for me than my wife, but it worked out really good.
So with Ethan being finished, is there any want to start doing that again to kind of pick up back on that side, or not so much?
I don't think as much. We're empty nesters now for the most part. And so we're kind of busy in our own businesses, our own business and our own personal life now. Picked up a few other things instead of a 15, 16-year-old kid. We're taking care of my elderly mother who lives in a nursing home. So other responsibilities have come into play since then. And so we probably wouldn't redo that again.
Okay. And I know you're a huge proponent on roller hockey. Like I see you tweet about it all the time. And what role do you think that played in Ethan's game? Because he's from my perspective, he's a really good 200-foot player, and we've seen a few opportunities where he's made a play in the defensive end, and it's led to a play in the offensive end. Like, is that something that you think he got from roller hockey, or it at least helped build because there's different rules in roller hockey that lead to offensive things.
Correct.
So, like, do you think that played a role in his hockey IQ and the ability to go from defense to offense so quickly?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I do. A lot of the kids that I start coaching and grooming that jump from roller to ice typically are offensive defensemen right away. And Ethan, when he first started playing ice, his first travel team ever, he was the best backward skater on the team. It all came from midline. And so he automatically grew into defense. And so he always had the green light to carry the puck up the floor whenever he wanted because of that ability to see a different vision on the floor and be able to break away at certain times.
Yeah, I think you really kind of see his skills when we were on the penalty kill. Because roller hockey's 4-on-4 for the most part. Am I right in that one?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So he seemed to understand like the placement of the 4 players that he had, even though he's looking at 5. Like I feel like his hockey sense of being comfortable with 4 players on the ice really showed and played a big role in his ability to kill penalties for Western the last 5 years.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. And since there is only 4-on-4, when there is a penalty, it goes to 4-on-3. And so when even on a power play, you seem to be a little more comfortable as well. Seeing, different looks and different lanes to fill. Definitely.
So moving on as he's grown and you went through juniors and everything, there's the recruiting process that comes with any player. Usually we hear what it's like from the coaches and what it's like for the players, but what's that like as a parent to go through a recruiting process from a particular college? I don't know how many Ethen actually was visited by, how many schools he was talked to by, but just how is that as a parent to go through when you have these different teams wanting your kid to go play there, and how much of a role did you play in helping maybe the decision?
Honestly, I was rather shocked. Uh, I was always the down player. I was the one who always made sure Ethen stayed in check and didn't get too cocky or confident in himself. And so when we first was approached by his U16 coach and said, "Hey, there's a couple of college teams looking at Ethen. They're they're kind of interested in talking to you guys." That was the process that they have to go through. They can't actually talk to Ethen. They got to go through the parents and the coaching staff. And on the way home from practice, I was telling my wife, "Really? There's teams that are really looking at Ethen?" And so um, I was shocked at first, to be honest with you. I knew he was good at what he was doing at that level, but to see him, people interested in him at the next level, caught me off guard. And so at first, that's what it was. And then we talked to Ethen and said, "Hey, what kind of school would you be interested in?" And we talked about what schools that he would, what interest that he had in the schools. And number one priority for him was a smaller attendance of school, smaller enrollments. And number two definitely was hockey was the most important sport on campus. And so when we had a couple of schools call, we did a visit with North Dakota, we did a visit with Minnesota, and then we did a partial visit with UNO, and and then he was on his way up to Michigan for a showcase, and they stopped at Western to scrimmage Little Caesars Hockey Club and a practice, and Coach Murray came out and talked to his coach, and then assistant coaches kind of talked for a little bit, and Ethen got the whole team got a tour of the locker room, and after that, Ethen was kind of sold. He came back home and did a little research, and he was like, "Wow, the arena's super cool. They got to stay and watch a game, and so they got to see the Lawson Lunatics in action, and so the energy that was spent there from the fans and from the Lawson Lunatics really excited Ethen." And then when he did his own research and found out the enrollment's a little bit smaller school, and hockey seemed to be very important to the school and the programs there. It wasn't I just think it was a no-brainer at that point. And we talked to him a little bit, and we wanted him to be more comfortable in making his own decision, even at a young age of 18. And so we thought if he felt comfortable with it, that we would be okay with it as well.
I'm definitely thankful that Ethen ended up here. And my eye fell on Ethen, I think, his freshman year, and it wasn't really hard. He was on a really good line, especially I think his last 2 years they put him on the same line as Hugh McGing, who was an incredible college player, is having a pretty stellar AHL career with Springfield. But he started taking, like, if Ethen and Hugh were on the ice at the same time, like, something incredible was going to happen. Like, those two guys, like, they knew where each other was going to be. They knew when to pass and where to pass, and chances are we were scoring a goal more games than not. Like, those two guys were going to pick up a point that game, and so he quickly became one of my favorite players to keep an eye on. And just the evolution of his game from a freshman to this year has been incredible to watch and so much fun to watch. And I think, or I'm wondering if you guys talked about Ethen coming back for as a grad student. You know, he had that big senior class ahead of him come back. Guys like Hugh McGing, Dawson DiPietro, Wade Allison postponed a pro career to come back and play one more year at Western, even though those guys didn't have the same success they were hoping for, being the COVID year that they came back. But like, did that play a role in Ethen deciding to play that extra year?
We never really had that discussion if what they did affected his decision. We just asked him if he felt that he'd like to come back, and he said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm coming back," was his first response. And he said that he would get back to my wife and I and let us know. And it didn't take long, a day or two, and he called back and says, "Yeah, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to stay another year." And I think that was done talking to the rest of his teammates that wanted to come back and try to prove, that they're a better team than the year before, and the whole COVID thing, and Brandon Bussey getting injured that first game in the pod. And so I think it really worked out well for him. Obviously, it was a smart decision. Michelle and I, my wife, we didn't really have a long conversation with him. We just asked him what his thoughts were, and if he thought he was going to come home or move on into business or do whatever he was going to do at that point in time. And he said he would get back to us in a couple of days, and it didn't take long. It was probably a day, and he called back and said, "No, I'm staying."
Awesome.
Yeah.
We were all kind of shocked by Andy Murray deciding to step down so late in the year, and Pat stepping up and being the new head coach. Did you see the change in coach have a change in the way Ethen played the game, or do you think that like Pat being the associate coach in years before, like he just kind of maintained what they were doing beforehand?
I think there was a little bit of difference. I don't know if there was that big of a difference, but I do know that Ethen had mentioned that the locker room atmosphere was a lot more energetic, which I think funnels to the ice as well. And yeah, I think Pat changed a few things that kind of helped the boys move along and felt more confident in what they were going to do on and off the ice.
Anything from you there, Michael?
I have a couple little less serious ones that we can save for the end if you have another one, Wes.
I think I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. I do greatly appreciate you coming on. The one thing I will say is that I'm gonna miss our little after game conversations. Those were one of my favorite parts of the season, was knowing that you guys were there and getting to say hi to you and your wife. So if you're ever in Kalamazoo and let me know, and a beer and wings are on me at Waldo's.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd greatly appreciate the chance to talk again. So, hey, there's a cat.
Yeah. Well, we just found out that the National Collegiate Roller Hockey Championships are actually at the Wing Center there in Kalamazoo. And so there's a possibility we might be heading up there in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, it's right down the road for me.
So.
All right. So here are my two less serious questions. Not counting Lawson Arena, what is your favorite NCHC arena that you've been to? And then not counting Omaha, what is the favorite NCHC city that you've been to?
I would say Miami of Omaha was probably the best city. It's a small town. There's like a home-like feel. We didn't get to spend a lot of time at any of the cities, except get there a day early, and then we always departed after either the game was over Saturday night or early Sunday morning. So didn't get a lot of time in any of those cities. But the time that we did get to spend at Miami of Ohio was pretty interesting. It's a nice, small, hometown community type feel. That was pretty cool. As far as arenas are concerned, Lawson by far, I think, is the best arena for any hockey to be played in as far as a college atmosphere, no question. I'd have to say the nicest rink is no question, but the Ralph. There's a lot of money invested into that facility, and they do it right. There's a lot of nice things, and it's still, obviously North Dakota. So there's still that hockey sense and hockey feel, but it is definitely a nice facility.
I feel like I would be missing out if I didn't ask. So, any news from Ethen on the pro ranks? Anybody interested? Anybody you guys are talking to?
There's some interest there. Just not sure which direction he's going to go, but there's some interest, and whatever he decides at this point, we're 100% behind him and going to do whatever he wants to do. We're going to support him.
Yeah, this class might be out. The 6 guys who went in the class before him. Josh Basalt just signed with the Buffalo Sabres organization. Joel just signed with the Toronto Marlies. So I mean, guys from this class are going places, and even with the transfer stuff. So,
and Ronnie just had an assist tonight for the Flyers. It's nice. Going to look a lot different. I think all these teams are.
I think that happens every year. When you think about, oh my gosh, they're leaving, it's going to be a whole different team, and they just come out and they just continue to play. Obviously, that relies a lot on coaching and recruiting and doing what they do best.
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to continue to be a Bronco fan, or are you guys going to maybe look a little closer to home and become Maverick fans?
Well, we might go to the Mavericks a little more, but I'll always wear my Western gear.
Awesome.
No question.
All right. Yep. I think we've ate up enough of your time, but I did greatly appreciate having you here. It was a very fun conversation. Keep promoting anything you want to promote, talk about. We don't have a big audience, but it'll find somebody someday, hopefully.
If I could say anything at all about roller hockey, I'd say roller hockey helps the game of ice hockey. So if you got a young ice hockey player out there, find a roller hockey program somewhere and get them involved. It's a fun, different look of the sport, and there's lots of scoring opportunities offensively as well as defensively.
And look at what it did for Ethen.
There's lots of guys playing in the pros right now. Jason Zucker, the list is long, but lots of guys that played roller hockey growing up. TJ Oshie,
Patrick Maroon, 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Big.
Actually, Patrick Maroon still plays at the national championship level. So, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Thanks again for being here, and hopefully we'll pick a time and maybe when Ethen gets to the pro ranks, maybe we can sit down and do this again. So, awesome. Greatly appreciate your time and all the fun conversations we've had over the last 5 years, and great success to you and Ethen to come still, I hope.
Thank you. Thanks, Wes. Yep, me too. Thank you.
All right, no problem, man. For the rest of you, we're going to take a quick break so we can bring back the chat with just me and Mike. So give me a couple minutes and we'll get back to you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I really appreciate your time. All right, thank you.
Good night. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Jeez.
right, and we are back. So a huge thank you to our special guest, Dave. That was a really fun conversation. I'm super glad we got to have it.
Yeah, that was awesome to get the perspective of a parent, and just everything that they've gone through in the whole process of having, the leading goal scorer in the NCAA as their child, and just the behind the scenes things that you don't really think about a lot.
Right, and to I learned a lot in that conversation. I did know the roller hockey background, but I had no idea that they were a billet family for a lot of people coming in, or that it was kind of like a fluke chance that Ethen ended up at Western Michigan, that we beat out North Dakota. Take that every day of the year.
And the Gophers. I'm assuming I'm assuming it's Minnesota.
But yeah, no, it's super fun conversation, and I do hope that we get a chance to get Dave back on as hopefully this podcast grows and we pick up some more viewers here and there, because his story is an interesting one to tell, and I think it's one that deserves to be heard.
And he's just a great guy to talk to. I mean, I could have, if we didn't have a game to watch in St. Paul when I happened to run into him, I can talk to anybody for hours, and I could have definitely talked to him for hours because he's just a great guy.
100%. So we got some big news before we get to the Final Four talk. The last 3 games of college hockey that'll be played later this week.
Frozen Four, come on, let's get it right.
Well, I was trying to remember how many games were being played, and I was going to say the Final 4 games of college hockey, but there's only 3 games left to be played. We have the Frozen Four. We're going to figure out who the last 2 are going to be. All right? Calm down, Spanky. God. However, there's been I don't know if you've been keeping up with the signings and the moves, but there have been a ton of moves and signings since the last episode. I don't remember. I don't have dates written down, but I'm just going to run through the list of signings here. We have Perbix going to Tampa Bay, Bussy signing with Boston, Warrad signing with the Grand Rapids Griffins up, of the AHL, pretty close to me. Zach Driscoll signs with the Toledo Walleye of the ECHL. Connor Ford goes to the Henderson Silver Knights of the AHL. Kevin Fitzgerald, Samus Deneau, and Matt Anderson all signed with the Stingrays of the ECHL. Michael Joyo signs to the Toronto Marlies, as I mentioned earlier. Easton Brodzinski signs to Hartford. Nolan Walker goes to the Marlies as well. And Josh Basalt signs with the Buffalo Sabres organization. So those are just, the signings that have taken place in the last week from the NCHC.
And a lot of them have come, especially from Western. When I was looking today, we've only lost 2, and that would be Fanti to the Oilers, and then Noah Cates to the Flyers. But they were both going to be, I think they were both going to be seniors. I know Ryan was a senior.
Fanti was a junior this year, so he was going.
He was a senior. He was going to be a senior, but I think he made the right call going there, and then that's going to give Stay-Skull, hopefully, when he's healthy. I know he came back and played a little bit. Give him the chance at that number 1 opportunity.
Give him a real offseason to get conditioning back, and to recover a little bit from the off-ice battle he had this season. And then Noah Cates got his first goal in the NHL tonight too. So the guys who made it to the next level, proving that they do belong there and playing well. And then some transfer notes. I'm probably missing some. I know this was a big week for Western announcements. Scooter Bricky, Jared White, Alex Azalandis, and Ross Hawryluk, both backup goalies, and have entered the transfer portal out of Western. So that's a unique situation to be in. Part of me thinks that some of it is due to the coaching change that came very late in the summer. Potentially, you're expecting one coach and they kind of leave in the middle of nowhere. And it kind of hurts you going into the next season. And potentially part of Bricky entering the transfer portal is he was actually, I'm pretty sure, going to be the last dude from his class still at Western. With Bussy signing, Adard signing, and I think there was another one, but I can't remember who at this moment. So yeah, that kind of left him as the only person from his class to still be at Western, which is is a kind of interesting thing too. You spend 2 years with the same players and kind of build a bond, and to be odd man out, so to speak, could be a little daunting for a player. So
yeah, and I'm just looking here. It looks like Connor Kelly.
Oh, and yeah, Connor Kelly was the other one that I had marked down for most recent news of transferring out.
Yeah, Jake Rosenbaum, who I don't think he played a whole lot. Jarrett Lee, which I think he was about a third liner for us, and then Ben Almquist, who I don't think he got a ton of playing time. He might have been a fourth liner. They all entered the transfer portal. Connor Kelly is one that surprises me a little bit as a sophomore. He was definitely going to play a bigger role on the team moving forward. He had a good season, but maybe he just felt that it wasn't right for him. Who knows? There's a lot of different factors going into the transfer portal. I'm sure he'll find a team that he'll fit better with, because he is a very good player. He just, with all the older guys, he just might not have gotten as much playing time as he would have liked, as he thought, especially with the COVID year and people coming back.
Right. Yeah, the interesting thing to me is to see both Western goalies in the transfer portal. Brandon's leaving a big hole in the crease there, so to speak. So definitely there was playing time up for grabs. As far as there's probably going to be a pretty healthy goalie competition that would be held throughout the off season and into next year, to figure out who would be the number one and freshmen coming in. So definitely there was a potential to be, have a good shot at a starting role. So for both of them to kind of choose that direction, and just because you've entered the transfer portal doesn't mean anything's set in stone. It's right. Just the transfer portal was just set up as an easier way for players to put themselves in a situation that they felt fit better. Before you had to ask the coach's permission, and then if they didn't say yes, you had to ask someone else's permission, and so on and so forth, where now they just have to let one person know, and they're open to talking to other schools, and then they can take their names out at any point, and then it's up to the school whether they're going to recognize their position on the team or their scholarship. So it's not set in stone, but it does kind of leave the off season kind of in this position of, well, what do we do goalie wise if you're Western Michigan University?
Yeah, and I don't know what their situation was as far as if there was a solid set number two, or it was it's kind of up for grabs with how you guys play if Brandon goes down.
We literally used Brandon for 99% of the season. There was 10 minutes that another goalie came in, and then I believe that was Ross. So that might have had a decision like, oh, I'm not going to get playing time. Mm-hmm. But again, you entered the portal after they knew Brandon wasn't coming back, as far as at least when it was announced for them being in the portal that he had already gone. So there's going to be this open spot and there's playing time available.
Yeah, and my thought on that is if they didn't quite know if they had a clear-cut number one, you look at last year, UMD, we had 1A, 1B with Stayskull and Fanti. There is that opportunity unless neither of them felt like they could beat the other one out and they both just entered. I don't quite know, but you look, there are those tandems. It's just sometimes you get a stud of a goalie like UMD had previously. And I think even this year, if Zach didn't have his cancer, it would have been that same rotation. Ryan might have gotten a little bit more of the playing time just because he's a little bit older. But it still would have been a rotation. They still would have gotten playing time, which is different than the previous years with Shepard and Miska and Kaskasuo, where they were just the number one, kind of like Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, it was even it was a weird situation to even see like Brandon play, literally, like 99.9% of games. He's literally out for 10 minutes. So to have that situation at Western, like, we've always kind of had at least a goalie spell the other one here and there. And there were probably a few times where I think we could have used the backup a little bit more than we did. But I'm not the coach. Those aren't my decisions. And honestly, like, even looking back on it, it worked out more for us than it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of tends to wonder, maybe if Bussy had a game off here and there, how does the end of the season turn out? Like just those hindsight questions. Like, is he a little more fresh? Can he get to a few more pucks? Can he? I mean, he can't score goals in 2 of the last 4 games we played. We were shut out. So, and we definitely had a chance to win those games. But at the same time, like, does he make a stop that leads to a goal for us? Like, those kinds of questions. And it's not necessarily fair to him to put that kind of pressure on him, but just, thinking back, like, how do you prepare for the next season if you're not getting playing time?
Mm-hmm.
And experience.
And I think that a little bit of a difference there compared to our back-to-back national championships, and even our 4-year run to the Frozen Four, our goalies had the whole off season to prepare and get ready, and they played the whole season prior. Where Brandon this year, he missed a lot of time. Yeah, he still had the whole off season to prepare and get in shape and everything, but that's just a year of experience that you don't have, a year of practices that you don't have, just because of the injury.
Right.
So but it's all, there's a reason we're sitting here and not behind the bench of one of these colleges coaching.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons.
They know better. Well, but they know a lot better than we do. And it's their team. They understand their kids. We just see the product that's put on the ice.
Right. All right. So let's finish the show up with some national championship talk. Games start Thursday at 5. I didn't see an announcement as to who was playing at what games. Have you seen that yet?
The Minnesota Mankato game is the first.
Oh, so that's the 5 o'clock game?
Yep, that's the 5 o'clock. Actually, yeah, I think so, because Thursday is opening baseball, and a lot of the teams play in the.
And I think they moved.
They moved it to ESPNU.
Yeah, what hosers?
And that's one way to piss off a lot of Minnesotans and alumni, but especially Minnesota when it's battle.
I mean, it's an all Minnesota semifinal.
They're from
ESPN's definitely not winning anyone over with that decision.
No, and from, I mean, it's kind of a rivalry in a sense where they're from arena to arena. It's probably an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes. You're probably an hour and a half, because it's about an hour and 15 minutes from my place to whatever they call it now.
Aren't they former WCHA opponents? So I mean, so they've definitely played each other in the past. There was an in-state rivalry when they were both in the WCHA. So you're still calling back those ties, and then the fact that it is Minnesota versus Minnesota, there's a large amount of bragging rights and nothing more. I mean, it's the most important game between those two teams this season.
Yeah,
it's for a chance to win the national title.
Yeah, and Mankato has been probably the number 2 or 3 team in the country most of the year. I think they had a little spell at number 1. No, actually, they were
number 1
for a long
time.
Yeah,
they were fighting U of M there for a long haul at the number 1 spot.
Yeah, because they're the number 2 overall seed, which, I mean, I'm still not convinced 29-9-1 versus 35-5-0. I granted it's a slightly weaker conference in the in this new CCHA. I think just more super high end, but a little worse bottom end.
Yeah.
I still don't think that was worth of the number 2 overall seed, but that's a little Minnesota bias too.
I have no, I watched most of those games. Minnesota beat Western. I don't know who to really pull for. I'm not one of those guys who like, well, if you beat us, you better go win the national title. Like, no, we lost our game. Like, cool. We lost before it was important, type of thing. But congrats to Minnesota on making it to this point. Minnesota State played 2 very good opponents to get to where they are. I think it's gonna be a close. All the games have been really close so far. Aside from the what looked like was going to be a blowout in the Michigan American International game, ended up being a lot closer than I think a lot of people thought, and Michigan versus Quinnipiac ended up being a tighter game. So I could see. I think Minnesota State might have the edge as far as goaltender goes, or Minnesota has the edge going as far as goaltender goes. He's been hot after coming in the middle of the season because the guy in front of him went to the NHL. So,
but
Dryden McKay, hot hand. Dryden McKay's been really good too. Like it's two goalies. And
He's been one of the best goalies in the country for the last couple of years.
Minnesota State's on a 17-game win streak.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's that one's just it's so hard to call. It's going to be a toss-up, but I think Minnesota's played more tough games this season. So I'm gonna give it to them. I think it's either way. It's close, and I'm probably just gonna say Minnesota because they took Western out and they're just filling the spot that Western vacated.
For me, I think if Minnesota played tougher games, it's only by a few. Just based off the non-conference schedule that Mankato plays. They play a similar non-conference schedule. So it's pretty much just the in-conference that they'd have the tougher games.
Did they play each other in the icebreaker at the beginning of the year? Because wasn't it U of M? I know it was U of M, Minnesota State, UMD.
I'm trying to think of
who was the last team in that.
Providence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
I don't know.
Providence. But for me though, I've seen most of this Mankato team play in person, or well, some of them at least. And I know Dryden McKay was still the goalie a couple of years ago when we could still go to games. And he's just solid. And they're just putting together really, really solid teams. And they've been, well, they were here last year. They were in the Frozen Four last year. I think they have the experience that the Gophers don't. And I'm also a little bit of I like the Gophers back when they were winning the national championships when I was younger, but then I got older. I'm like, especially when I heard the Gopher rejects and we're the better team than you. So you're the Bulldog rejects. Based off that, and then a slight bias, I'm going Mankato. I know our sales guy at work, I should say our director of sales, he asked me, he's like, "Oh, are you going to be a Gopher fan?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "What are you going for, Mankato?" I'm like, "Yeah."
And then on the other side of the bracket, it is Denver versus the draft-heavy playered Michigan University. Two, pretty solid teams. Michigan's had some ups and downs this year. They have talent, but talent's only going to get you so far. And I think we've seen that we're at the point where talent doesn't necessarily mean everything. Denver's a team that works hard. And the thing about Denver that I don't think a lot of people realize is, yes, everyone knows that it's hard to play in Denver if you're not from Colorado because of the atmosphere and the thin air, but that actually gives them a boost when they come to these other places that are lower. Like, their bodies are used to running without as much oxygen or air, and it's part of the reason why some of the Olympic training stuff happens in Colorado Springs at atmosphere. It provides a little bit of a boost. Like, your lungs are like, oh, there's more air here, let's go. Yep. So it's not as much of a deficit for them to come down and play at lower levels than it is for people to go to them. So they kind of get like a little bit of an advantage there. But they're also just a big, gritty, heavy team. And, they have a couple of that can score. They do have the point leader in NCAA in Bobby Brink.
Yep.
They've got Carter Mazer who's got an incredible shot. He's only a freshman. Who is a Michigan dude, so there might be a little bit of want to lay the smack on the Wolverines from him. And honestly, I think when you're a team like Michigan, you have to expect that you're getting everybody's best game, because everyone sees that, like, oh, you have 5 kids who were the top 5 picks in the NHL draft, and you have a team of like 12 NHL picks on it. Like, guess what? People are taking notice of that. They're coming. They're playing their best to show that, yep, we didn't get drafted, but we can compete with those guys that you thought deserved to be taken first or third or whatever it was. Like, at when the puck hits the ice, everybody's on the same surface, and it doesn't matter if you're first overall or taken in the 7th round. Like, you got an hour to play.
Yeah, and then also Denver has Magnus Krona
the best name in college hockey.
I think possibly the best name in hockey in general.
It's up there. There are some good names, though.
There are some good names. But yeah, I don't know a lot about Michigan and who their goaltender even is, but I think advantage Denver in that, just because of the teams that they have to play. And it's going to be more of a wide open game than what they faced with UMD. It just is. I think it could still be a 1-goal game, but I think it's going to be more of a 4-3, 5-4 game instead of a 2-1 with an unlucky bounce, or lucky if you're a Denver fan.
Denver has the ability to withstand your offensive push and keep you from scoring. But if you let off the way that we've seen Michigan appear to let off in games, or at least become a team that gets sloppy and allows the other team to come back, that's where Denver's dangerous. That's where Denver can hurt you. And Western saw it twice this year. We went into the second period with a couple of leads, and by the third period, we were down 3 goals in both games. So if you let that Denver offense get going, and you take a poor penalty, chances are the puck's going to end up in the back of your net, and you're going to be looking up at a scoreboard that has you in a deficit. And if you're Denver, like, you have to capitalize on those opportunities and make sure that you're using them to the fullest. And if you're U of M, you can't be caught in those situations, because 4-on-5 is 4-on-5 no matter how talented your 4 is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So, but I did have Denver moving on from the beginning, and I'm going to stick with that one. I just think they're a more well-rounded team, and I know you're saying, like, oh, well, they have their defenseman is the number 2 overall pick or the number 1 overall pick or whatever it is, but to me, U of M speaks of the individuals But if you're talking about Denver, you're talking about the team of Denver. Denver is a team.
Mm-hmm.
U of M at this point feels like a collection of players, almost like an all-star team. And there's been situations where all-star teams have been beaten by teams. I mean,
yeah, and
look at what the under 18. I think it was the under 18 team did this year a couple times. They took Michigan to overtime, and I think they beat North Dakota.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you might have, you know, one really good player here or there too, but they don't get there. I mean, look at how many assists Brink has. It's not that he's scoring a ton of goals. He's just got an ungodly amount of assists.
Yeah.
And that's the team. He doesn't have those if he doesn't have the team around him. And they talk about him.
And he has enough trust in his teammate to know that he doesn't have to take the shot. There's a guy with a better shot and a better opportunity, and I'm taking the assist, and we're getting a point on the board.
Right. If you're not talking about a group of individuals and all these draft picks and whatever, it's okay. Yeah, you might have some draft picks on there, but even, you know, Western or UMD, yeah, we have NHL draft picks on the team, but you're not talking about the TV broadcasts are going to spotlight certain guys. That's just the way that it is. Like Noah Cates, he's the captain. You're going to spotlight him. Jesse, or is it Jesse? No. I don't know. There's too many kids. Blake Biondi. He was our leading goal scorer. They, you know, highlight him for his goal scoring, but you never really noticed him. Like, you didn't pay attention too much because it was a whole team game, and that's what Denver brings.
Yep.
So I'm with you. I think Denver wins. I think they're, you know, I had UMD moving on, and I think when we were talking and doing the first round picks, I said I want UMD to win. I think they'll win again, but either way, whoever wins that game, I'm having them move on because I think they were two of the best teams in that half of the bracket and in the country that either one of them could win a national championship.
Yeah. And you know, you might say that Denver got lucky to get past Minnesota to Duluth, and sometimes you have to be lucky, and sometimes you have to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, them being lucky got them into a place where now they have to be good, and so it's one of those things. Like, I think both games are going to be super good. Either way, we're going to end up with an incredible finals game. I have Denver versus Minnesota. You have Denver versus Minnesota State. Man, I kind of want that matchup. But I also like the thought of Denver having to play against McKay and seeing what that goalie does, the way they kind of struggled against Ryan Fanti. Also sounds super appealing.
And I think Mankato matches up a little more like UMD than Minnesota does, just in their style of play. They're a little more of a speed team, but they can also play really gritty. I think that would be a very fun matchup. I would like to see that a lot more than Minnesota, Denver. But that would also be fun because that goes back to, again, another WCHA rival, and they had some big games back in the day.
And then I think I'm gonna go NCHC. I think we're gonna take the conference is gonna get another national title, and I can see Denver taking it all. They had a good run where they were so hard to beat, and they got over that hump of Minnesota Duluth. And even though there was 10 days in between, I think they're going to kind of use that as a turning point and press on through these last two games.
Yeah, I think if Minnesota moves on over Mankato, I think Denver wins. I'm a little bit torn on. I think if it's Mankato Denver, I think it goes to an overtime at least, if not more. that one's really tough to pick because one, I want the conference to get another championship because that makes the conference look even better. At the same time, I mean, it's always fun when a Minnesota team wins. I think if they match up, though, I'm gonna have to say Denver wins. But it's gonna be closer than if they play Minnesota, I think, and that's just a tough national championship to pick.
Either way, I think the 3 games that are played are going to be really close games. It's going to be really good hockey to watch. If you want to see, future NHLers, these are the games to watch because no one's been taken from these teams yet because they're still playing. It'll be interesting to see what I'm kind of interested to see like what teams look like as the off season continues and we get closer to understanding the rosters going into next college year. There's probably going to be a lot of movement out of Michigan. There's always with that senior class or that class of players. I think if they win a national title, we're going to see a lot more movement than if we don't. But there's still a high potential for a good number of those kids to take NHL, AHL contracts, and they might end up in the NHL playoffs here in the next couple of weeks. So, but either way, really good games. I think that just about wraps up this episode. A huge thanks to Dave Frank. Make sure to check us out on, if you find this on YouTube, we do go live on Tuesdays sometimes. It's not every Tuesday. Things happen. Life happens. But we are live on Twitch at twitch.tv/painted_Bronco. Check the Goalhorns and Fight Songs Twitter. I usually post that we're going live. Follow myself and Mike on our individual Twitters that are shown in the bottom of our screens here. One there, and then Mike's is way over there. Outside of that, I don't think there's... check the bios for emails and other information, I guess, that you may need. We'll be back next week to discuss the winner of the national title and get a good look at the off season. Oh, one more thing. I completely forgot. Big news came out that Pat Ferschweiler will be an assistant coach at the 2023 World Juniors. Not to be confused with the World Junior Tournament that will be played in a couple of months. That is the postponement of the 2022 tournament, and he will be a part of the coaching staff for the next year, back probably when it's played at its regular time over the winter holidays. So
yeah, the 2023.
Yep. So congratulations to him on that one, and congratulations to all of the players who are moving on and joining the professional ranks of college hockey players. I know that's a big step, and like, I know if you went to Western, it Mike's probably the same way if you went to UMD, but if you're a Western player who's moved on, and just know that this guy is a fan of yours for your entire career. So, I'll follow, I keep tabs on Twitter and see when guys score their first goals like Noah Cates did today, or pick up their first assist on a point like Ronnie Eder did. So,
yeah, even if we hate your team, we're still a fan of you.
Yeah. So, and if you become a Red Wing, I'm definitely buying your jersey, just saying. But if you're on another team, like, you gotta kind of be a special player. So, but once again, this will be up on YouTube at some point. If you choose to, give it a like. If you don't want to, give it a dislike. If you don't want to do either one of those, don't do either one of those. I don't care. You're an adult or a child who found this. You're a person. You can make decisions. Make them. Subscribe. Don't subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Don't follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitch. Don't follow us on Twitch. I really don't care. But, it's one of those things that you say when you do this kind of stuff. So, there. I said it. potentially going to go live on the video games here in a little bit. So if I do and you happen to stick around, I'll see you over there. If not, adios. Thanks for listening or finding this on the YouTubes. Bye-bye.